Our video for today is going to be solving problems using equations. So our problem for today is the existing walkway is 150 feet. The park rangers believe they can build the additional walkway at a rate of 5 feet per hour. So the first thing we need to do on these is draw a picture. Here's my existing walkway, 150 feet. And then if I build for 1 hour, I get 5 feet. If I build for a second hour, I get another 5 feet. And this continues on, depending on the number of hours I want to work. So how many feet after 5 hours? Well, I start out with 150 feet. I work for... So I have my 150 feet, and then for every 1 hour, or I work 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and 5 hours, and each hour that I work, I get 5 feet. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm multiplying. I'm saying 5 hours times 5 feet per hour gives me 25 feet. So 150 feet and then some 25 feet added on to it gets me a total of 175 feet. The first step was to multiply, and the second step was to add. How many feet after 7 hours? So I start with my 150 feet. I work for 7 hours. Each hour gets me 5 more feet. So I multiply, and I get 35 feet. 150 feet with an additional 35 is 185 feet. My first step was to multiply. My second step was to add. So if H equals the number of hours the rangers work, then what is my expression? I have 150 feet to start off with. I work for some number of hours, 5 feet per hour. So what I do is I multiply. So H times 5 equals 5H. And then I'm adding. So this is 150 plus 5H as my expression. Now how many hours would it take for 500 feet? So I start with 150 feet, and I need to figure out how much I'm going to build. So I'm building 350 feet extra to get a total of 500 feet. Now, my 350 feet of new walkway is going to be divided into sections that are 5 feet long. So I'm going to say 350 divided by 5 equals 70 hours. My first step was to subtract. My second step was to divide. So we have 150 plus 5H equals 500. I subtracted first, got 5H equals 350. Then I divided, and I got H equals 70 hours. So how many hours for 270 feet? Well, I start with my 150, and I need 120 feet more. Dividing that into 5 feet sections, I get 24 hours. My first step was to subtract. My second step was to divide. As an equation, it looks like 150 plus 5H equals 270. My first step was to subtract, and I got 5H equals 120. My second step was to divide by 5, and I got H equals 24 hours. How many hours for a total of 100 feet? I start with 150 plus 5H equals 100. My first step is to subtract 150. My second step is to divide by 5, and I get H equals negative 10 hours. Wait a minute. Does this make sense in the problem? Can I have negative 10 hours? And if I start with 150 feet, why would my goal be to have 100 feet? It doesn't make sense. So always make sure when you're working these, you go back to the problem you're working and you make sure that it makes sense with what you should have.